Hello and welcome to Chakra News. Now, over the course of the past week, some stories have raised important questions about India's strategic future. To begin with, the film Sutlej. How did the launch and subsequent ban of this film turn into a national debate? Secondly, will the revival of the Kaveri jet engine program solve India's problems with the GE F404 jet engine? And lastly, how will the commissioning of the INS Mahendragiri change India's maritime power and presence? To speak to us about all this and more, we've got with us Sandeep Unnithan. Sandeep, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Deepak. Interesting week as always.
Interesting, that's to say the least. But there are some very serious questions, particularly beginning with Punjab.
Right.
Now, there's this film, it was earlier called Punjab 95, I believe.
Yeah.
And now it was released as Sutlej.
Yeah.
So what's the debate about it? What's happening?
Well, Deepak, this movie that you mentioned was, it was earlier called Punjab, like you mentioned. It's now being retitled. It was on OTT. It was taken off, apparently at the request of the government. But this has stoked a huge controversy, simply for various reasons, actually. The fact is that Punjab, for a lot of people, is still a raw wound, right? You've not had the kind of healing. You've seen militancy being eliminated in Punjab 1992. So if you can look at it, it was roughly a decade, 1981, 82, right up to 1992. So a decade of violence where one of India's most progressive, prosperous states went through the kind of violence that we hadn't seen in that part of the world, at least since partition. A lot of the problems are, they date back before partition, pre-partition, this entire movement over there, political movement. But I don't want to go into all of this. Let's go to the immediate thing of the film, which is about a human rights activist who raised cases of disappearance.
Jaswant Singh Khalra.
Jaswant Singh Khalra, who was a real-life character, who was picked up. He worked in a bank. He was picked up, and that's played by a very popular pop singer and actor, Diljit Dosanjh. And this movie, of course, is a biopic. It's about Khalra's story and how he kind of, tries to uncover the truth, and it leads to his death. He dies in the same circumstances as the victims that he was probing. Now, the criticism a lot of people have with this film is that it shows a one-sided depiction of events there. If you look at it, it's like a river with two banks. Punjab's problem is a river. It has two banks. There was one thing of militancy, where you had militants running, rampaging through the state for a decade. They desecrated some of the holiest shrines of Sikhism, that is Akal Takht, the Golden Temple, Harmandir Sahib, in 1984. But the cure for that proved to be even more devastating, which was Operation Blue Star in 1984. Then you had the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi, the Sikh riots, which was more like a pogrom. I mean, Sikhs were, murdered in utter brutality in Delhi and several other parts of the country. And this led to the police finally overcoming this insurgency. And that is typically what happened towards the end of this movement. What really happened was that when the militants, the terrorists, they started targeting the families of the policemen, that is when the police kind of turned on these militants. They got their act together. And by 1992, 1993, fatality rates in Punjab were down to double digits, and it was the end of the movement. The reason is that once the people, once a movement loses its legitimacy, then, these terrorists have nowhere to hide. And that's typically what happened in Punjab. But the issue of Sutlej is that it presents a one-sided narrative of this whole issue, the Punjab problem, particularly the disappearances. Now, they seem to indicate that it was, just the police atrocities. The film focuses a lot on that without looking at the history, the build-up to all of that, right? Of course, the police did commit some atrocities. They've been court judgments to that effect. But the fact is that the terrorists were equally, if not more, brutal. They went through the rampage through the countryside. They killed innocent men, women, children. They lined up people, pulled passengers out of buses, identified them on the basis of religion, massacred them. The film is silent on all of these aspects. It shows a one-sided version of what happened in Punjab in the 1980s. I'm not saying that it is incumbent on a filmmaker to show two parallel tracks there, but you must actually bring in the fact that, look, for the sake of balance, especially when you're talking of such sensitive
subjects, certainly,
which have still not been resolved. There are still families that are grieving more than 4 decades later. How do they react when they see a film like this being very extremely popular one with a very popular mainstream actor, which seems to portray just one side of the story? Feelings will be hurt, people will be upset, and that is essentially what seems to have happened with this film. I mean, I'm all for freedom of expression, but within certain limitations. When you look at issues like this, the Punjab militancy, for instance, where literally tens of thousands of civilians were killed, a little more sensitivity should have been shown. And the fact is that Punjab elections are not very far away, Deepak. It's
Right.
just 7 months around the corner, February of 2027. And Khalra has become some kind of a rallying figure for a lot of people, who portray him as a crusader. But the fact is that there are no black and whites in this. It's shades of grey.
Right.
Khalra is seen as someone who's not exactly what the movie portrays him to be. The fact is that he had certain sympathies, and that is one reason why his portrait hangs alongside many of these notorious characters of Sikh militants in the Golden Temple, the killers of Mrs. Gandhi, Satwant Singh, Bein Singh, and of course Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale,
Yeah.
General Shabik Singh, all of these things. So he is, seem to be more associated with that violent, the strain of the Khalistan movement. He may not have been a Khalistani sympathizer, but he definitely had something that was, you can't explain fully.
Sandeep, you touched upon something, which is very important, and that is the state of Punjab. Now, this is the sword arm of India.
Yeah.
This was the heartland for the Green Revolution.
Yeah, the granary
and,
of India.
the home to one of India's most prodigious communities, the Sikhs. I mean, some of the most hardworking, most successful people
Yes.
ever. But, to me, it appears that Punjab never really recovered from the horrors that it faced in the 80s, in the 90s. And if you look at the last few years,
Right.
you will see year after year, there is some disturbance that happens.
Yes.
For example, there was a lot of agitation with regard to the laws. And of course, the farmers had their viewpoints. The government had its viewpoints. That's something. After then, there was Amritpal, who had come around. Right before Amritpal, you also had, this sudden burst into prominence of the gangsters of Punjab, which
right.
are in news even right now. And now you've got the release of this film. It appears that for some reason, a sense of closure does not come easily to the Punjab and to the Sikh community.
And also, interestingly, now that you say it, there have been a lot of movies that have kind of captured this various phases of...
Marches was one.
Marches was one of the first, I think, 1995. Gulzar made that film. Then another one was Udta Punjab, about a decade ago, which talks about the drug addiction and all of that. The state has a rampant drug problem, right? It is a deeply complex set of issues that Punjab has been going through. And like you said, you've never seen a formal resolution of any of these problems. They're all festering there, under the surface, waiting to erupt. And you have movies like this which bring back memories. I was there, for instance, I was covering a story for Aaj Tak about 12 years back at the Golden Temple. I was recording my bites, and I had to pack up and leave very quickly because the people who were there started to get very angry and agitated. Right? Because I asked somebody something about of Blue Star. This was the 30th anniversary of Blue Star. And
that's a touchy subject, of course, like in every sense of the word.
Sensitive, because crowds started gathering and they started getting restless. And that's when I decided that, look, it's better to kind of, pack up and leave rather than see a situation. This is the thing. It's a very emotive community.
But Sandeep, just to push forward this thought, why do you think resolution has never happened? To me, it appears, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, But it sounds that a lot of people, they have interest in keeping the pot boiling.
Possibly. I mean, there could be a political angle to all of this. It's a very crucial frontier state that, it's been there. It's been a frontier state for thousands of years. And more so now, given the kind of tensions between India and Pakistan. You have Pakistan that has been fomenting terrorism in Punjab for decades. And what happened in the 1980s was wholeheartedly embraced by Pakistan with a kind of weaponry and training that was provided to them.
And of course, you've got the people living abroad.
Yes, the diaspora, which has seen a very different Punjab from what exists today. I'm not saying that all the problems are solved, but the state today is not as bad as it was 4 decades ago. I was in school. I remember how bad things were. We thought we had lost the state. It had simply seemed out of control. They were, like I said, bus passengers were being killed in broad daylight. The militants were ruling the roast. They were giving all these interviews to TV channels, the few that existed then. And they said that we rule the countryside. Yeah?
Right.
So the police were nowhere to be seen. That turnaround came about because of KPS Gill.
Right.
Exceptional police officer like KPS Gill and many others. As it so happens with insurgencies all across the world, there are police excesses, right? But you cannot use one narrow story about police excesses to kind of try and defame the entire counter-terrorist
Because it just
operation.
feeds into the flame, rather.
Absolutely.
Moving on to another subject, Sandeep. Now, India had a deal with the Americans for about 100 GE F404 jet engines.
Yeah.
And for one reason or another, every year it appears that, the deal will never really come to fruition. Of course, it's been signed.
Yeah.
But out of those 100, how many have been delivered?
Yeah, about a dozen, less than a dozen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so India is now turning back to a program that it had started with a
Yeah.
lot of hope, the Kaveri jet engine
We
program.
should never have stopped the Kaveri engine. I mean, it was a catastrophic mistake what we did in 2008. Firstly, to delink the engine from the aircraft. That's like taking the heart out of a patient and saying that, no, don't worry about this heart. We are going to get you a new heart and, we're going to try and implant it. And now what we're seeing with the Tejas is that you're trying to fit a heart into this patient for which it was never really designed. You were actually going all along with the Kaveri. It was built around the Kaveri engine. We should have gone ahead with it regardless. The government, the scientists in their wisdom chose to delink the program from the jet engine in 2008, nearly 2 decades ago, 18 years back. Catastrophic error. Then in 2014, they shelved the engine. Now, jet engines aren't like potatoes and onions that you go and buy in a market, which we seem to be doing with the 404 and the 414.
How many countries are there that can create jet engines?
Half a dozen.
Half a dozen.
It is such a rarefied science that very few people have managed to crack it. There are, of course, out of the 5 P5 countries, China has been only the 5th country to do so very recently. Now, that's precisely because it's so complex. The technology is so difficult to master, the metallurgy, the entire science of making a jet engine, it's extremely complicated. And that's the reason why very few countries have mastered it. And the countries that have mastered it are very reluctant to part with that know-how. Now, we might kid ourselves by thinking that we are going to get all kinds of transfer of technology, and therefore what's the big deal about a jet engine? It is a big deal. Jet engine is, it's not rocket science, right? I mean, they say that it's, you use this expression, it's not rocket science. Jet engines are not rocket science. A rocket is a single-use item, right? You fire the rocket, it's over, and can recover it and then refill it and relaunch it. But a jet engine has to perform every single time, which is why the tolerances and all that are so extreme. It has to, 1500 degrees. You're looking at literally, metal coming close to melting point. That kind of, temperatures, stresses, strains on all of that. We did not put adequate either capital or focus or expertise on this jet engine the way we should have. If we had in 2008, we probably would have had a basic functional jet engine today. And I think now we're going back to it. There are reports which suggest that the DRDO is now reviving that. There is, of course, a plan to revive it for the Ghatak, the unmanned combat aerial vehicle, a UCAP. That's great. You should do it. You should have done that. But I also think that it's still not too late to get a version of the LCA with the LCA Tejas with a Kaveri engine. Maybe not to the full specs. Like they wanted about 85 kilonewton thrust, and they managed about 73, which is not bad. They should have continued to develop it. And I think this is largely a problem of our, like I mentioned, our inability to understand how critical engine technology is. And we've spent only a fraction of the time, resources that other countries have on jet engines. Like, for instance, they say it costs about $2 or $3 billion to develop a jet engine. We gave up after spending just less than $200 million.
Right.
And what is $200 million? That's the cost of 2 fully loaded Rafale fighter jets.
Or a couple of high-end Bollywood films.
Well, you got it.
Yeah.
But here is the thing. I still think it's not too late. We must relaunch a jet engine program for a series of jet engines. You need one for your workhorse, which is your LCA Tejas Mark 1, Mark 2. You need jet engines for your AMCA, which is another problem, right? You're trying to get into JVs with Safran. Rolls-Royce has now jumped in with an offer. You have to have parallel jet engine programs. And I think the big problem, Deepak, with all of our jet engine programs is that we tend to see them as the delivery item for gas turbine research establishment, GTRE. Oh, that's small government department should deliver. Whereas across the world, jet engine programs have been all of nation approach. You have to pump in more resources. You have to, in this case, for instance, I've written about this. I've proposed something like an advanced technology vessel project, the kind of program architecture that the Indian Navy set up to build the Arihant-class SSBNs 4 decades ago. Today, you have all 4 Arihants in the water. 3 are in commission. The 4th is on sea trials. And the ATVP, which is the program directorate, has become a hub of submarine design expertise, technology, a technology hub. They're handling something like 5 independent submarine programs. That is remarkable. This is something that the Indian Air Force should replicate. The Navy is 90% of the ATVP is Indian naval personnel. The Air Force needs to get into the driver's seat, into the pilot seat in this case, and drive this jet engine program. Without that, we will still be going around in circles. And I can bet on this, Deepak, that 10 years from now, you and me will be still talking about jet engines.
But let's say, for once, things go according to plan, right? And we hold the course, we pump in as much money as it needs to be done. When do you see a Kaveri jet engine, performing as it needs to?
Well, the first early versions of the engine could come out by the end of this decade, another 3 or 4 years, and you could have a basic jet engine. And then you also need to look at engines for your Mark II, which would be your GE F404 equivalent, or your the higher ones, the high powered engines for your AMCA, for instance, 110 kilonewton, 110-20 kilonewton. You need to have parallel engine programs going. So what we're doing is we're looking at like an iterative process. You do one Kaveri, then you do another one. It's like we need to have an all-of-country approach for parallel jet engine programs. We need to do all of this now and not wait for one Kaveri to be developed, then we go on to the next one. We need to do this in parallel because you're looking at a
spiral development, as it's called.
Spiral development for all of these.
Yeah.
And it is really important for us to master the Kaveri because the Kaveri will do what you said, spiral development. It could be the basis for an entirely new class, a new range of jet engines that India will produce.
But what happens to the deal with the Americans, the GE 404 and the GE 414, which was supposed to happen? Do we kiss them goodbye?
I seriously doubt things will actually work out the way we want to because
and we've already paid them.
We've paid them a lot of money. The GE 404 engines are in the pipeline. They're coming in drip irrigation speed.
In ones and twos and threes.
In ones and twos. They say the supply chain issues, there's possibly some truth to that, but given the fact that the F404 is an engine that very few countries use now, they're all moving on to higher versions of those engines now. 414 is another engine which is something that the US is kind of got us in a bind with. We really have no answers to that because we built an entire aircraft program around the 414, which is the LCA Mark II. And if the Mark II is to come in the numbers that we hope they will, which is like 120, 140 aircraft, we need those engines quickly.
Moving on to the Mahendragiri. Now, this is the sixth Nilgiri stealth
sixth of
frigate.
7 frigates. Yeah.
So, tell me about this. Like, to begin with, what is the Nilgiri-class frigate? How is it different from the other ones?
So the Nilgiri-class frigate is a class of stealth frigates which are low observable by design, which is they're meant to appear smaller than a ship of that class, which is about 6,000 tons plus, would appear on radar, and thereby what is smaller on your radar is far more difficult to hit. That's the basic principle of stealth thing. So you have a lot of quietening systems. You have rafting, which prevents radiated noise. You have the angles of the deck of the superstructure is so angled that it's designed to either absorb or to deflect radar cross sections, which makes it look much smaller. That's what the ship is, and it's a new class of frigates that were ordered in 2009 as a successor to the Shivalik class. Now, the Shivalik class also started coming in around that time in the early 2010s. 3 Shivalik class. Then you have the Shivalik were Project 17, a new class of frigates. Then you had the Project 17 Alpha, which is the Nilgiri class, and then you will have a Project 17 Bravo, which is still in the pipeline.
Right.
Now, there's just one more of these frigates left. I think it's the Vindhyagiri, which will be commissioned in the next couple of weeks, we're being told. But the bigger problem with the Mahendragiri and the Nilgiri class is that once these ships are delivered, they're very impressive ships. I mean, they're fantastic. The kind of weapons 32 cell VLS launchers, BrahMos missiles, all of that. Formidable ships, 6,000 tons, which incidentally is the size of a Delhi-class destroyer, which I covered as a young reporter 3 decades ago. For us, a 6,000-ton ship in those days was a big deal. But today you're talking of a 6,000-ton frigate, which is a much smaller kind of ship. And you have a Project 18, which is going to be like a cruiser, virtually a light cruiser, 12,000 ton plus. But the bigger problem, Deepak, is that while these ships are really impressive, what's happening is that we aren't putting up what they call a production drumbeat, a steady production line that will ensure that you will get a frigate every year, a destroyer every year, you get a submarine every year. Something like every 18 months, you need to have all of these new combatants coming out to not only replace your old ships and submarines, but also to augment it. Now, what's happening is that while this rate of induction is very impressive, like you're looking at something like this year, you're going to see some 40, 50 inductions.
Right.
It's really fast. It's one of the fastest that it has been in several years. And in fact, the Mahendragiri, I must mention, it's built by Mazagon Docks. It was built in a record time of 4 years.
Okay.
In 2022, they laid the keel of the Mahendragiri, and you're talking of 2026, 6 years commission. It's one of the fastest builds for a ship of this size and class. The others in this class haven't been as, speed. It's divided between MDL and VRSC. So I think the ratio is 4 and 3, 4 in MDL and 3 in Garden Reach. But the rest of the ships have taken 6, 7 years. Now that's a problem because you're looking at twin problem here. One is that your processes are not ordering ships quickly enough. Because those ships aren't coming soon enough, there's another problem. Your yards can't build them fast. So, like I mentioned, Mahendragiri is 4 years. The standard rate of building any frigate or destroyer, large ships, these are capital ships, right? Capital ships, very briefly, are multi-role ships which have the ability to be to wage anti-air, an anti-air war, knock down aircraft, drones, to destroy submarines, to attack other ships, attack targets on land, multi-role ships, literally. Right. So these capital ships, we take a long time to build them. Like I said, 6, 7, 8 years. The Japanese are building them in 3 years, right? 2 or 3 years. The Mogami-class, for
Hmm.
instance, the newest one was built in less than 3 years.
Right.
The Chinese are building ships at the rate of one every 2 years. It takes them 2 years to build a cruiser or a destroyer or a frigate. Well, destroyers and frigates, they don't have cruisers yet. But that's the rate of shipbuilding, because they've embraced technology. They're building these ships as blocks. You have these pre-outfitted blocks where everything is kind of, you just assemble those ships, 4 or 5 sections.
They've put the assembly line to perfection.
Absolutely, it's the assembly line thing. Whereas we build ships the old-fashioned way. We first build the hull, then we launch the hull, then the hull is empty, there's no machinery, nothing in that. Then there's a process of fitting out that begins. Many of our yards are like, they're all boat yards, literally. You can't build ships of this size, 6, 8, 12,000 tons. You'll have to move to new facilities because many of these yards are really old. There's more than 100 years old.
Right.
So that's the problem. You have a problem of yard capacity, you have a problem of technology, you have a problem of orders. Your orders aren't being placed soon enough, right? And take a case of the Nilgiri-class, which the Mahendragiri is the 6th. This was first sanctioned by the government in 2009. The last ship is going to enter service in 2026. You're looking at a 27-year period to build, 7 ships?
Right.
This is unheard of in any other developed country or any other navy that, any other country that needs to have a powerful navy. You need to build a steady drumbeat, have a long production line. Why order these ships in drip irrigation, modes like 6 and 3 and 4? Order them as batches of 20,
That seems to be a trait with the Indian Armed Forces.
So we were talking about this with Admiral Menon, got that podcast that we did with him this week, where he mentioned that the problem with our entire system is we are so budget driven,
Process oriented.
Process oriented, of course, but
Yeah.
balance sheet driven is like, the entire defense budget, according to him, is just about, credit. It's a balance sheet, according to him. Whereas we should actually be looking at building capacities, capacities. And I see his point in that. We need to start auditing the kind of capabilities we have or we need for, say, anti-submarine warfare, anti-air warfare, drone capabilities, the ability to project power across, say, into the South
We
China
need to be
Sea.
capability oriented rather than platform oriented.
Platform oriented. So while the Mahendragiri is an excellent platform, and I hope we build many more like her, but we need to see more capabilities. We need to see more ships like that. We need to invest in other technologies like electric drive. I mean, it's a separate discussion, Deepak.
Well, thank you so much, Sandeep. For our viewers, that's all we have for you today. We'll be back soon next week. Until then, stay tuned to Chakra News.